Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with the video that everyone has been waiting for, well, at least in my mind, and that is none other than the battle of the budget guitar.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
That's right, so I've recently made some purchases on the lower end of the acoustical guitar spectrum, and I kind of wanted to pit them against each other to let you know what, in my opinion, is not just the better overall guitar, but what's the better value, because, our money's important to us, right? Especially as a beginner, so we don't want to be throwing our money away on something that's going to be completely useless. And spoiler alert, neither of these guitars is useless, and actually both of them were pleasantly surprises. Excellent. So who are the competitors? Well, let's find out. Alright, so over here, first off, we have the Rogue RA-090 acoustical guitar. Quite a, I don't want to say notorious in a bad way, but kind of a notorious guitar in the industry, as I've been getting a lot of comments lately on the unboxing video that I did and review video of it, that this guitar has been featured in tons of giveaways. People buying strings, whether from Musician's Friend or Guitar Center, have been gifted these guitars often. So I'm kind of curious what's all about that. But anyway, it's a very highly mass-produced budget guitar, and we'll see how it stacks up against its competitor, which is none other than the Orangewood Manhattan. So this is a very recent purchase of only like 2 weeks, and I did a brief unboxing and review video of it. Quite pleased with it, and I wanted to see how specifically it measured up to the Rogue. That's kind of why I bought it. I was actually gonna go a tier up and get the Austin or Echo, but decided to go with this so I could give you guys the actual scoop. Now, a couple things about both these guitars. In order to make it completely fair, I went ahead and took liberty of restringing them both with the same exact strings. These are 12s. I tend to play a little bit heavy, with a heavier hand than I should, but they both got D'Addario Phosphor Bronze strings on them. Freshly put on yesterday. I let them set overnight so they could, stretch in really well. Basically, I'll get them all tuned up. They're already tuned up, but I'll retune them again. And another spoiler, these guitars actually hold tune very well, despite having fairly substandard tuners, at least on the Rogue. So yeah, that'll be the same. I also conditioned the fretboards yesterday. They were both extremely dry and in need of some lemon oil, so I went ahead and did that. I also took a Dremel with a little cloth piece and I buffed out through a buffing wheel onto the frets, because both of them were kind of gritty and dirty. Less so on the Orangewood, a lot more so on the Rogue. And you'll see actually the Rogue got pretty shiny. I think they're probably just nickel as opposed to a steel or whatever it is they're using over here on the Orangewood. So yeah, including also moisturizing the bridges. So we're going to go through a couple different categories here and let you know what I believe are the pluses and minuses for each one and how they compare to each other. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so first thing we're going to have is a comparison of the hardware that comes on both of these units. Now, being lower end and acoustic, there's not a ton of stuff to go through, right? But there's definitely a few differences here. Let's start up at the headstock on the tuners. Both of them come with no-name, non-branded tuners, but the Orangewoods are infinitely better, much better gear ratio than the Rogues. The Rogues are pretty sloppy, a lot of play in them. Don't feel great, but they do hold a tune very, very well, or yeah, hold the tune very, very well, so not really any complaints there. It's just they don't feel very good. They feel like much less quality than the half kidney bean tuners on the Orangewood. These actually feel really, really good. For being on a budget guitar. So yeah, definitely 1 point here for the Orangewood. I'm not sure if I'm going to do like a point spreadsheet. I guess I could try to, but it just came to me, so I doubt I'm going to do it, but you'll get the gist at the end, I'm sure. So yeah, tuners, definitely a point there for the Orangewood. As far as the stock strings they both came actually with pretty good strings. They were actually more of a gold string or brass, whatever, on the Rogue, and I didn't like them at first, but once they broke in a little bit, they were actually really good and really strong, because I strummed pretty hard, like I said, and I never popped one the whole time. I hated changing them, but I wanted to be fair for the video. So the Orangewood came with a much lighter gauge, probably 11s, maybe even 10s, and they felt I don't know, pretty slinky. So they were good. I did not need to change them, and it kind of pained me to do so, but like I said, we wanted to be everything equal here. So but they were pretty good strings. Now, which one did I prefer playing on? I liked them both. They both had their pluses and minuses. I'll call that one a dead heat. They were both pretty good, but honestly, the strings that came on the Orangewood did feel of a higher quality. Maybe not as utilitarian, right? But you know, what's people going to do with a newer guitar? They're going to strum too hard, right? I mean, that's the curse of the novice, right? We hit too hard. So those strings actually make a lot of sense there. We'll call that one a dead heat because they were both good strings and they were both perfectly fine when I took them off. What else? Okay, so I've noticed this is more on the aesthetic side, but the sight dots are quite a bit bigger, the inlays, and they are inlays on both of these. On the Rogue, as opposed to maybe the more sophisticated looking tinier ones. That's to your taste, so who knows. I'm not going to worry about that too much. It doesn't really affect anything. As far as the fret work goes, the fretwork is definitely better on the Orangewood, better dressings on the end, better feel. Overall on them, they were much less gritty right out the gate than the Rogues were. And while they're not as shiny, and maybe a titch smaller, that's debatable, it's hard to tell. They're just better overall, so definitely give a point there for the Orangewood as far as the frets go. Now getting down a little bit further to the pick guards. So this might fall under aesthetics, I don't know, but we're going to call it an accessory. With the Rogue, you had no choice. It came with one, and with the Orangewood, you have the option of putting the one it comes on with on, whether you want to or not. So it's kind of a nice touch. It's not like it's that hard to put on. And if the Rogue is any indicator, it's better that you put your own on anyway, because I think they have a mismatched, misshaped pick guard here, because it just cuts into the rosette, and we'll get into that a little bit of aesthetics. But I'd have to give the point, just for the virtue of being flexible, to Orangewood on that. Quick note though, on the Orangewood guitars, once you put the pick guard on, that you can no longer return them. So keep that in very much mind. So I would keep yours for a few days and play them to be sure that you want to keep it, because that's what their site says. And you know, whether you can work around that, I don't know, but that's what we're told. Some more hardware. So getting down a little further, we'll actually include this up with the nut. I forgot to mention that. So the nut on the Rogue and the saddle are both plastic, and the nut and saddle on the Orangewood are both bone, which is a really nice plus for a guitar at this price point. So yeah, what can I say? It's a clear winner here for the Orangewood. Another point there. And they just feel better. Really, the nut feels especially a lot better. The bridge and all that feels fine. There's nothing actually wrong with the Rogues. They're cut fine and all that, but since Orangewood went a little bit further and threw bone on there, gotta give them the point on that. The pins, I pulled them both. They're both just standard little cheapo plastic pins. No points there either way. Both look pretty tasteful. Actually, the white might look better on here, and I have some brass pins I thought about changing too. But once again, I wanted to leave them stock other than the strings. The bridge itself, definitely a higher quality one on the Orangewood, and it's easier to find out what kind of wood it is. There's differing sources depending on what site you go to on what's actually on the Rogue. Sometimes it says Purple Heart, sometimes it says painted maple. I don't know for the fretboard and the bridge, but whatever the case may be, the one for the Orangewood is definitely superior. I believe that one is just straight rosewood, it said. So no painted maple. This actually might be painted because it looks a lot lighter. But once again, it got a much deeper color when I oiled it. But so once again, another point here for Orangewood. So as far as the hardware, it's really taking off. And there's actually another piece of hardware that I want to talk about too, because the Rogue itself did not come with a second strap button. I had to buy another one and install it myself. Not a big deal. It's about a $6, $7 job, I think, and maybe half an hour of your time, but that's something else to consider. It didn't come with one. And I even did a video on that. Maybe if I remember, I'll link it up here somewhere. But so yet another point here for Orangewood. So Orangewood's really taking it home as far as like the hardware on these things. So that's pretty much it. Neither of them came with a strap of any kind. It's all just bare bones for the most part. Like I said, the only thing that technically came with the Orangewood really was the pick guard itself, which is an optional put on there. But everything else being equal, the Orangewood is definitely superior in the hardware department. I mean, the tuners itself would win it, this whole competition. So, and the nice dressing on the fretwork. Okay, so let's get into accessories. What did they come with? Well, I kind of just touched on that a little bit, but basically they came with the guitar and not much else. But And I say not much else, but actually the Orangewood came with an amazing gig bag. Showed this on a video, of course. This is a soft padded gig bag. This is not some really cheap, flimsy bag. This is a really good gig bag with a great big pocket in the front. So another point there, it just blows the Rogue out of the water as far as both hardware and accessories, but there's really no other accessories to speak of. Did come with 2 strap buttons, so there's that too. So, all right, so right now the Orangewood's kind of walking away with this thing, but we got a few other the categories, and of course we'll get into the tones and all that coming up here shortly. So next, we're going to talk about the setup on these, and honestly speaking, I'm going to give this a dead heat. They were both set up extremely well. I know Orangewood prides itself on every guitar that goes out of their distribution facility in Los Angeles gets a professional setup, and it shows. The action was perfect. I've done nothing to it. The intonation is good. Saw no problems with the saddle and the pin settings. I did notice that the strings were eating into the wood a bit more on the bridge than they were on the Rogue, so I don't know if there's more tension. I can't be any more tension on the string, but whatever the case may be, it is chewing into that. That's not really a setup problem, I don't think. But surprisingly, the Rogue was also set up perfectly. Like, the action was absolutely perfect. I've never touched it. Intonation is good. So no complaints there whatsoever. So that's a tie. I'm going to give that a wash on the setup. They're both really good. Now, I don't know. I would say that it'd probably be a lot more consistent that the Orangewood would have good setup, because, you know, they actually do that purposefully. And whether this just gets a factory setup or what on the Rogue, for the prices these are going for, that's probably what I would lean towards, but you never know. So setup anyway, wash. They're both set up very well and no complaints there. So let's get into something a little more subjective here, and that's the aesthetics of the guitar. And hopefully you can see them okay, and I'll try to hold up each one here just for viewing pleasure. Let's take a look at the Rogue first, and then we'll talk about it just a little bit. Here is the headstock and the front and the back of the guitar. Notice it's a piano black high gloss, okay? And high gloss front finish as well. And the top, I probably should talk about this in hardware a little bit, but once again, differing sources. Some sources say white wood construction, like the whole body of the guitar and the top. Sometimes it says spruce. I don't know what's there. So I don't think it's spruce, because this is spruce here on the Orangewood. It always tells you spruce. And the grain pattern is nothing even close. So I'm guessing this is more like basswood or balsa wood or something like that. But a heavy finish on the front there. Now, as far as the Orangewood goes, here's the headstock with nice iridescent logo and accompaniment. The front of the guitar. See if you can pick up the grain pattern there. Kind of a yellowish. And of course, pickguard. Oh, I didn't mention the rosette. The Rogue has a really big rosette, but once again, it's kind of marred a bit by that pickguard being stuck right onto it. But it's an interesting rosette, probably a more interesting looking one than the herringbone, the small herringbone that's on. Don't fall. The Orangewood here, and of course the back. So I can tell you the woods are on this, and this is a satin sheen, which is perfect. That's the best finish, at least for me, for an acoustic guitar, and this whole thing is satin, as opposed to a lot of cheaper guitars. Also, you'll notice too that there's 3-ply binding on the front, but binding all the way around on both sides and on the neck. So super big point there for Orangewood on that. And that's about all we really want to talk about. I mean, we already talked about the sight dots. That's give or take your preference on there, on the smaller ones, on the bigger ones. I don't really care either way. Maybe the smaller ones look a little classier, but honestly, the Orangewood does not probably need to have any more points to win this one as well. But I will say, while I'm going to give the point here to Orangewood as far as the aesthetics go, I don't dislike the Rogue. In fact, I do prefer the coloration and wood grain on the top better than I do the spruce on the Orangewood. This looks actually a little more like pine, and I don't know, just not really my cup of tea. And I do like the black pickguard better than the tortoise, the faux tortoise shell here look. And I think actually it would probably match better here, even though it probably is a little closer here to the mahogany wood. Oh, and yes, the Orangewood is mahogany back and sides and spruce top. Both of these are laminated guitars, so layered tops too, as well as sides. So these are not solid tops. You need to go up by another $100 or so, or 70, 80 bucks to start getting into the solid tops. So, and even then the sides will all be that. But really, I don't mind the piano black. While it's a fingerprint magnet, I think it looks kind of cool actually and different. So I have no problems with that. I just think there's a few other things that kind of set the Orangewood aside, mostly the binding, and I do still prefer the wood grain look of the mahogany, and so there is that. So that's basically all of the, what can I say, more, I don't want to say subjective, because some things really aren't subjective. Like, objectively speaking, these tuners are way miles better than the ones on the Rogue. But as far as like subjective, I'll still give a point here for the actually aesthetics of the guitar. But so there we go. They're both pretty good looking units in my opinion. So yeah, that's going to wrap up the more visual and hardware section. So now we're going to get over to some sound tests, and I'm going to try very, very hard to make these a really fair comparison. I'm going to try to play the same exact notes and or chords. I'm going to try to play the exact same music. I actually not composed, but I composed a little song just for these two, a real strummer. And I'm going to try to play it exactly the same, and I actually will try to cut back and forth in between them during a song so you can really get an idea. I'm going to try to play it exactly at the same strum level. I'm going to try to, well, I'm not even going to try, I'm going to be sitting in the same chair, recording at the same volume levels with the same mic in the same exact spot. So the tone can't lie, right? And, you know, I can't really tell you, like, just hearing which one I like better right now. They both sound really good in different ways, as I recall, but I'll know on the rehear. So anyway, without me gapping anymore, let's go ahead and get over to the sound test, and I'll join you here in just a few minutes. All right, fresh tune on both guitars, brand new pick. Let's go ahead and get into some sound comparisons. I'll be cutting back and forth during the video between the two for each section, so I'm always going to be starting with the Rogue, and then the second one will always be the Orangewood. So let's start off with some basic stuff. Let's see how a G sounds here. We'll do some chords. Okay. All right, so here's the Orangewood. Let's hit a G. There's an E. Let's do an A. And a D. We're not going to go through the whole chord progression, but okay. So there's some basic chords right there, just played with a medium strum. Now let's do a little bit of volume here. Let me hit this a little bit hard on an E. Then we'll do medium. Then a light. Okay, let's do a little bit of sustain. Just sustain on a G. Okay, and that's most of the basic ones right there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and do kind of a strum song that I kind of developed for this, and I'm going to cut back and forth in between the two. Let's see if you can kind of discern the difference in them. So here we go. All right, we are back from the sound test, and I apologize, I don't have the best sound recording equipment, but hopefully that was, you know, at least some little bit or small indicator of how these will perform, at least in the hands of a novice like myself. Now, I did learn some things because I was actually editing before I came out and shot this about the guitars, but honestly, they are really, really close on sound, I'd say. If I was going to say anything specific about each one, I'd say that actually there's a bit more clarity up high on the Rogue, and a bit of a warmer, slightly boomier sound on the Orangewood. It's kind of funny, is because when I first got this and then I did my review on it, I was like, I don't think this one is as loud as the Rogue, but I really think it's basically on close to even footing as far as loudness goes, and I think it's boomier. And definitely I think it has a warmer tone, slightly warmer tone. I mean, neither is great, and actually I forgot I needed to make a small adjustment here. I could catch a little bit of buzz on the, I could check that on the replay, but I'm not going to fool with that anymore. But I guess the final, like, I don't know, judgment on these is they both sound pretty good for what they are, and they're very similar, so I don't think the sound is really going to change much as far as my overall rating on these. Maybe there's a bit more of a sophisticated sound in the Orangewood, but honestly, it would take a much better player than me to, you know, make that coalesce into something. So as far as the sound goes, while there are some small differences, I'd say it's just about a dead heat. So that really won't change anything. It's not really any points given there. So let's just go ahead and get to the end of this long video and this all long comparison and give you my opinion on which one would be the best purchase for a guitar player. Probably a newer one, but really anyone. I haven't talked about the cost yet on what each of these cost. So the Rogue, I actually got it on sale for 60 bucks. I've been eyeballing this one for a while. It usually fluctuates between 60 and its baseline price of 100 bucks. Most time you go in the store, you'll see it for 100 bucks. Most of the time on Amazon or whatever, you'll see it for $100. But it does go down. Sometimes I hear it goes down as low as $50. But anyway, I picked mine up for 60. We're gonna say that baseline price is what the cost is gonna be for this comparison, so 100 bucks, okay? Because I'm going to be using the baseline pricing for the Orangewood, which is $135. So at best case scenario or equal footing scenario, the Orangewood is $35 more. Now, do I consider that a good value over the Rogue, the $35 extra? Yeah, I do. There's a lot of difference, actually. A lot more than you would think. Now, I guess the further question is, if you paid 60 bucks for this, you know, is this worth another, what, $75 than the Rogue? Sound-wise, maybe, maybe not. I guess it depends how finicky you are about it. But yeah, I'd say it's still worth it, because you have to take in consideration the great gig bag that you get with this. I was doing some pricing out there. The absolute cheapest one that you can get are about $27, and supposedly a padded gig bag, but I would say go up to $30, $35 in value for this one, because it's just quality, you know. So right off the bat, you're getting a gig bag. You're not got the fool with that there. So if you paid 100 bucks for this, basically now it's a wash. And so everything else that the Orangewood offers over the Rogue is kind of just, it's handed off right there because of that, just that simple fact of it coming in with a gig bag. I don't know if this ever comes on sale, less than $135, but I'd say for $135, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better value out there in guitars. Now, my verdict overall, you know, what would I say to the newer player? Which one would I recommend? I'd just say go with the Orangewood. As much as I have enjoyed playing around with the Rogue, you know, and I'm still going to keep it and work with it, it came up short in a lot of different areas before we even got to the tone test, and I'm going to call that a wash. I'm going to call the value, obviously, another point in its favor. The Orangewood already had 8 points. I was doing the tally when I was editing there, and I already, just in the fit and finish and everything else, I already given this 8 points to none. This didn't win a single category. So that right there tells you just like how superior this model is. Once again, is it a fair comparison? As far as budget goes, I guess it has to be, but I mean, you got some differences here. You got a spruce top versus whitewood or basswood, sometimes spruce. I don't know what this is. This is not, I don't think it's spruce. You know, you got mahogany neck, back. The neck here is NATO. You know, the fingerboard stuff's supposed to be the same. The bridge, you know, a lot of components are the same, but, you know, I don't know how fair that is, really. And you probably get a lot more resale value, if that's your thing, out of the Orangewood for people who kind of know that stuff. Then you have all the extra, you know, visual stuff, the binding all the way around and up the neck, you know. A better finish. The satin finish is, at least to me, better, and probably makes it a little more of a warmer sound too, like we might have noticed in the sound check there. It came with pretty good strings to set up. Came with 2 strap buttons as opposed to the one on the Rogue. So that's another thing you got to take into consideration. So the overall verdict is the Orangewood is the superior guitar, and even though it costs more on its baseline, I think it's still superior value, because once you throw the gig bag in that equation, that's the $35 right there. So we could say that both of these are $100 if you get rid of the gig bag, right? I would take the Orangewood all day long, just on that. And one thing I didn't get into was playability. Which one's easier to play? They're both pretty easy to play because they're both set up very well. Definitely an edge though for comfort for the Orangewood. It's got a satin neck. It feels really good. I like the profile on it, maybe just a tad better than the Rogues, as opposed to the gloss. The frets are nicer, so it's more comfortable to play, and there's a slight round over from where the fretboard meets the fingerboard or the neck, that the Rogue doesn't really have that. I mean, it's not really eased that well, so it's a little bit sharper there. So for longer play sessions, it's gonna be a little more painful to play. So yeah, all that being said, with the superior hardware, what I consider to be maybe a slightly superior sound depending on what you're going for. Now there might be instances where the higher is what you want more. It has basically everything over it. So yeah, I gotta go with the Orangewood in this comparison. This is your winner right here. Even though it costs more, sometimes you pay for what you get. And if you take the gig bag out of the equation, like I was saying, it doesn't really cost anymore, depending on when you pick up the Rogue. So yeah, great guitar. I'm very happy with it. And just a beautiful thing to have, it's a beautiful guitar to have in your collection, and I don't think there's any beginner that would feel cheated, feel slighted, and feel like they got an inferior product if they went with the Orangewood. You can get enjoyment out of the Rogue, you got to work a little harder to do it, and it doesn't have as much long-term value probably as the Orangewood was, but it's still a fine guitar in its own right for a beginner. But for the more experienced beginner / intermediate player, I think Orangewood all day would be the easy choice. So yeah, there it is. So okay, no fence riding on this one. The Orangewood does take this contest. So hopefully you found this very long-winded review somewhat helpful, and hopefully the sound is not too terrible. It might come better if you're wearing good earbuds or earphones, or at least have good speakers to tell the minute differences in the sound. I run through Bose over here, so I can kind of feel it, but Bose makes a lot of things warm too, so it might oversaturate. I'm going to check it out with headphones later, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, if you enjoyed this review, let me know in the comments below. What did you think about the sound differences and the quality of life and fit and finishes differences between these two guitars? Does anyone in the comments own either or both of these models? And if you do, tell me about them. I want to hear what your thoughts are on them. Were they just beginner guitars for you, or did you stick with them for a while? Like, I can see myself sticking with the Manhattan for quite a while. I think while I might be almost tapped out on the Rogue, I think there's room to grow for me at least, and to keep working on this one and not be in a rush to upgrade. So I think that's pretty indicative of a great beginner guitar. So anyway, yeah, if you have experience with these guitars, let me know what you think, and hopefully it was helpful to somebody.
High five.
All right, so I'm done rambling now. Thank you so much, yes, right, you, for hanging in for so long to find out what my final verdict was. That was the Orangewood is being the best value. And stay tuned for more guitar content and reviews coming up in the near future. So until next time, this is Genome, just making the fence a great value. Out.